So Frederic Bastiat is probably one of my favorite economic philosophers, and he really was outspoken about the role of law and the dangers of redistribution of wealth, and spoke in his book, The Law, about the proper role of government. And he really saw government as the judiciary, you know, the protector of freedom, liberty, and property, personal, individual life, liberty, and property. And he really honestly thought that this was one of the roles of government, and probably one of the few roles of government, but it was a very limited and very restricted in its powers government that even still had the right to interfere in the life, liberty, and the pursuit of people's happiness and ownership of property. So the law, he really talked about protecting individual rights and basically how the government should not interfere or engage in any redistribution of wealth. Taxation is theft. I mean, it is taking from the individual to fund other individuals. Social welfare programs is a redistribution of wealth. And people who say that, well, you know, we all have an obligation to look out for each other, we certainly do, but that's called charity, in my opinion, and that was certainly the opinion of Bastiat. He argues that the state is best confined to engaging basically in just the protection of life, liberty, property. Bastiat believed that any government intervention beyond that very limited role constituted, and this is where the term legal plunder comes from. Legalized plunder, where the government takes from some to give to others, right? There's your redistribution of wealth. It's theft. It's, you know, legalized plunder, however. Just because something is put into law doesn't necessarily make it just or a just decision, doesn't make it justice, right? Just because something is legal, you know, there was lots of actions taken by the Nazis that they had put into law that were legal, but it didn't necessarily mean they were just. So he basically was a big advocate of small government, you know, no redistribution of wealth. He did not like legalized plunder. He opposed taxation and regulation that served the interest of special interests, which of course government always does. Why? Because they need votes, right? And the special interests basically take precedent and priority over, you know, the broader public. And this is the whole concept that we're seeing today play out in reality. His ideal was more of a laissez-faire approach where individuals were free to engage in voluntary exchange, but without the state interference. And that's where I say, you know, charity and voluntary association come into play. You know, we had communities that used to look out for one another far greater. And it's funny, you know, if you take a look at anything today, government has gotten involved in healthcare, and what have we got? The sickest population we've ever had. Government has got involved in trying to reduce poverty, and what have we got? Some of the poorest people in that we've ever had, and poverty's getting worse. It's not getting better. Homelessness, oh, the war on poverty, the war on cancer. What have we got? More cancer than we've ever seen. Education, we've got more and more dollars being spent on education, and we've got some of the dumbest downed curriculum, and people are not receiving higher levels of education. People, I think, were actually smarter and more educated back 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago than they ever are or were today. So the seen and the unseen, he really talked about the unseen hand. You know, government may have come at much of this with good intention, but the unseen consequences and the harms that were often done economically as well as morally, in his mind, far outweighed any visible benefit. So that was Frederic Bastiat. I'm going to talk a little bit here again. If you like this, please do like, share, send me your comments. Ludwig von Mises, Economic Freedom, Austrian Economics. People hear me speak about this a lot. I have pretty much all of his books. Big fan. Mises was, again, staunch defender of economic freedom. He argued that central planning, whether through socialism or other government intervention, was a problem and led to huge economic inefficiencies and would eventually lead to economic collapse. And again, we're seeing this. Now, these guys all share a commonality here. You know, they all advocate for limited government, individual freedom and rights, and the protection of property. And, the further we stray from that, it's becoming more and more apparent to more and more people that the government is the actual problem. And he emphasized, price controls were a problem, whether it be trying to manage wages. One of the things that I see a lot of people today, they argue, well, my wage can't keep up. I need more money. Yeah, you do need more money, but there's another solution. If you keep demanding a wage increase, what's it going to do? It's just going to continually drive prices up. What we need to do is bring prices down. So instead of a wage increase, what we need to do is reduce spending by the government, reduce costs by the government. We need to bring the cost of things down, increase productivity, increase competition, for example, which would put pressure on prices as well. So there's a lot of things that we can do to actually solve the problem of inflation and price increases. And I'll tell you, wage pricing, and trying to fix wages and trying to do price controls and rent controls and those types of things is not the proper way to do it. It's actually going to have the opposite impact, and we have a tremendous amount of history and economic data that prove that. So, we need to re-educate the public as to what the actual problem is, and then how the problem, we can solve it, is not what is being proposed typically by the government. The government is proposing solutions that serve its self-interest, not yours and mine as, citizens of the country. So he was definitely not into social welfare programs, certainly opposed heavy government intervention. And he emphasized, that all these voluntary, involuntary exchanges that happened by force of the government would create an eventual collapse. He was very big advocate of, again, voluntary association, advocated for sound money, money that was actually backed by something. Right now we have a fiat currency which is backed by the government's promise. That's it. It's worthless. It is not worth the money or the ink that is being printed on the paper today. So he was more of an advocate of a gold-backed system, where the sound money, you could control the money supply by at least linking it to an actual resource, not just printing it off, which creates inflation if you actually print money. And that's where inflation begins, by the way, is in the printing of money. That's where the cause, that is what inflation is. The increase that you're seeing in prices, that's not inflation, that's the result of inflation, which is a lagging factor, which happens, 18 to 24 months after. So, preventing governments from inflating the currency was one of the things that he saw as very important role of government. And he did basically just wanted to control spending. There should be no deficit spending. A deficit, again, is a secret form of taxation. It's taking from future generations and spending their inheritance, their value, their worth, devaluing their assets and their money today for the benefit, again, not even for you and I, but for government. So these were all distortions that the government is very good at. And, he was a big advocate of, the free market. So his key concept was called praexology. And he developed this method basically of studying human action and arguing that free individuals were, in essence, through voluntary exchange, through a free marketplace, which of course we don't see today. And unfortunately, capitalism has been hijacked. It's big billionaire companies who have, through government intervention, come out winners and losers through heavy burdens of taxation, as well as barriers to entry, as well as regulation that favors them over others and limiting competition. So he thought that was basically the most effective way to input and control and coordinate economic activity was through free individuals. So again, I wanted to link, the common theme of, some of the thinkers that I'm an advocate of. Limiting the role of government is a huge one. Free markets, free market economy, economic freedom is again huge. Deregulation, if not no regulation, is again a theme amongst all of them. Opposition to redistribution of wealth, again, is a common theme for all of them. Education reform was a big one for Friedman in particular, but you can see that through deregulation and free markets, how this basically would apply to all these thinkers. And sound money and fiscal responsibility, proposing limiting the government's ability to inflate currency and control the money supply. They argued for fiscal responsibility, where government focused on basically a very minimal role, a stable currency, and avoiding deficit spending. So again, the solutions here were, easy to find. Small government, that literally a very limited scope of government, empowering individuals, increasing productivity, increasing competition, allowing the free market, less regulation. We're doing the exact opposite today here in Canada. And so I hope that helps you understand. I'm going to continue along with this theme a little bit more in some other videos. Please do like, share, ask your questions, leave your comments, and until next time.